Welcome back, csc200 W1 class, and I'm picking up where I left off. I'm in my president's database and all the information is in there, and I could see it's still there, but I'm up at the top here, and all I did was just show all the information, and it's so wide it barely fits in. So what I'm going to do is just show some limited columns. Remember, we said select with an asterisk means all, and you don't have to select all. Maybe I just want to see the president. I'll just see a list of the presidents from that column. And notice, you should be familiar with these names. That's why I actually showed this first, or did a select statement that showed all these columns, because I can see the ID column, I can see the president column. Notice there's no spaces in these, and you shouldn't put spaces in these, although if you ever need spaces to display, when you're doing a query, you just have to put them in quotes. But when you're making columns, you typically don't want to put spaces. Some of these are in camel case with a capital. It's not true camel case because it has a capital letter in the beginning. But anyway, we want to show the president. So let's go and just see the president column. So I'm going to select president because that's the name of the column. Select president, and I'm going to use from presidents because that's the table. Select president from presidents. And I'll just put a semicolon, and I'll just hit enter and output that. And I should get a list of all the presidents. There's 44, it says down at the bottom, and it's a very narrow column, and it's using the column name up here. Well, that's kind of really narrow. If I wanted to see it using something else, maybe I want to see the ID number, and there's the ID number there. I can show both the ID and the president column, and I would just do that. I can hit my up arrow on my keyboard, which will kind of copy it, except then I'm gonna backspace. I'm just gonna use my arrow to backspace. You go through with your cursor in here. Now I'm at the bottom now, and I'm gonna select. I'm gonna go right in here, and I'm gonna do a space, and I'm gonna select ID, and then I'm gonna put a comma, and that means I'm selecting two columns. So I'm selecting ID, comma, president columns from presidents, and I should move my cursor over before I hit return, and I'll move my cursor back over. And I'll hit return now, and I should see two columns, and there it is. And there's all 44, and now I'm seeing ID and president. Now maybe you don't want it to say ID. Maybe you want it to say like number, because we don't think of them as an ID. Now I'm going to do this again. I'm doing this so I don't wipe anything out. So I'm putting all this in, and then I do Control L. And then it starts at the top, and I didn't lose anything. So up at the top now, what I'm going to say is I'm going to do the same thing, and I could just do this from scratch. I'll start select, and I'll say ID, and then I'll use something called as. I'll say ID as, and this is where you could give it a custom name for the column. Maybe you want to call it number. So I'm going to put number like that. And then I'm going to put a comma, and then I'm still going to use president because that's the name of the column is president, so I'm still going to use president, and I could keep it as president if I want. I don't have to put an as there, but now I could put my from, and if you put form, you're going to get an error. And remember, the table is presidents, and I'll put a semicolon. And what do you think is going to happen? You think that might give us a problem? Let's see. Yes, we have an error, and it tells us it's near line 1. It doesn't tell us a whole lot, but it shows the period. So it doesn't like having a period, and it doesn't like spaces either. So one thing you could do is you could wrap that. If you do want a period, you could just wrap it around quotes. And again, this is just for your query. It's not going to change your table. I'm going to hit my up arrow, and I'll just go back here. Now again, we're going to do this with code eventually, so you don't always have to be typing things through here because this is very unforgiving. I'm going to go through here, and right here I'm going to do a space, and then I'm going to put a quote, and it looks like it's hard to tell where you are sometimes, and I'm going to backspace now, and then I'm going to go in front of it. I think I have to go to the next one, and then I'll put quote, and then it like inserts it in there before the comma. So I want quotes around number with a period. If I had something that had two words, I'd put quotes around there too. And that should fix it. I'll go to the end here, and I'm just going to hit enter again, and there it is. Now I'm seeing number, president, and that's working okay. And I'll probably cut this out, but just so you know, I'm doing this and then doing Control L to get back to the top again, not just wiping everything out. The next part, I'm going to just show 10 presidents, just something different. So I'm going to hit my up arrow, and that used my last query that I had in there. And at the end, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to backspace, and I'm going to add something that says limit 10. And usually you want the limit, typically you want to put that at the end after you've done all of your other query statements. So we'll try this and see how this works. This should just show 10. And it's showing Washington, Adams, Jefferson. It's showing the first 10 presidents. Now, if you want to change the order, you can actually change it so that we can put the first based on their name. The order is going by their ID number, which we're now calling number, but I'm going to hit up here. And if I want to change this and do order by, now one thing you have to watch, you have to put order by a little early on. So I'm going to go in here and do a space and then do order by, just like that. And I'm going to say order by president, because that's what I'm going to order by. So it's going to be in alphabetical order. And then I can also put it in alphabetical order. Now it should do that anyway, but just in case, I'm going to put ascending. ASC is for ascending, DESC is for descending. But I'm going to do the top one, so I'm going to make sure that it uses ascending, even though it should do it in alphabetical order anyway. And notice I'm keeping limit 10 at the end. So this is the first 10, and I'm going to see what happens here. And there it is. There's Adams, Arthur, Buchanan, Bush, Cleveland. Wow. I didn't think there were so many duplicate presidents. And there is 2 Bush presidents, and there's actually 2 Adams presidents, but there's only one Grover Cleveland. I'm pretty sure that's the same one and had 2 different terms, unless there was 2 Grover Clevelands that I'm not aware of. And you might say, well, is there a way we can kind of fix that so we don't know if this is a different guy? Well, we could display their names. I could do that. So I'm going to hit my up arrow again, and this time I'll display their names. Now we could display their first name. And I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put another one, and I'm going to type in first name. Now I should go back and put a space. And remember, it has to be exactly like it is in there. So I'm going to use first name, and then I'll say as, and I'll just put first like that, and I'll put a comma. And then I could say president. Right here, I'm going to put a space and say as, and I'm going to put last. And then I don't need another comma. The commas are only to separate the different columns. So then I'm saying from presidents, order by president, ascending, limit 10. So now I'm going to see their names. Now I have to take my cursor over to the end, and I'll hit enter. And now I have Adams. Now I see it's John Quincy Adams, John Adams. I see there's George Bush, George W. Bush. And then it says Grover Cleveland. I assume that's the same guy. Now, because these are duplicates and the other ones are not, there's even something we could use to organize this a little better, which is called group by. So I'm going to do my last thing here, and you could either do this. You can either copy this whole statement and paste it, if you feel comfortable doing that. You could certainly copy that. Or you could go down here and just hit your up arrow on your keyboard. And the last thing I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put, because I have all my things that are identifying, number, first, last, and you could certainly add more, but the only thing I'm going to do now is say group by. Now, the only question is where to put group by. And group by should be closest to presidents. That should be the first thing you do. So I'm going to take my cursor in here. Before I order by or anything like that, I'm going to go after presidents, and I'm going to say, I'm going to put a space here, and I'm going to say group by, and then another space, and then I'm going to group by both the first name and the president so that it treats them as a kind of a unit. So that way it'll create a group, a Grover Cleveland group, and it should remove that as a duplicate. It should treat that as a group. If these were both John Adams, you'd only see one John Adams. But because they're different, because this has a W, you should see both of them, but it should eliminate the second Grover Cleveland, which I think is the same person. So I'm going to say group by, and then I'm going to use my column names, which is first name, and it has to be exactly like that. And I could use comma again, and I'm going to use president. And then I don't have to put any other columns because I'm just grouping by these two. So I'm grouping by these two columns. It's kind of using those as a group. So if there's duplicates, there'll only be one of them. because it'll kind of put it underneath. It doesn't mean it's getting rid of it. It's just kind of almost putting it underneath. That should be all I have to do with that, with this long query here. It's a very long query. And I'll go to the end, and it's now on a second line. And all I have to do is hit enter. And I should get John Quincy Adams. I have the 2 Bushes, and I only have 1 Grover Cleveland. And that's what I want. And I still have my limit 10. So now that I'm seeing them, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still have 10 because I still had a limit of 10. So it's still showing 10 as output, even though I have Grover Cleveland grouped here. So that's all you have to do for the first exercise, is do that. Welcome, csc200 class from spring 2021. I'm coming to you from the present, as you were just watching a video from the past. But one thing I just wanted to point out that we didn't do last spring at this point in the semester was when you want to copy this stuff. We used to just leave our console open and I'd try to go and see it, but it didn't always stay open. So what you're going to want to do to save all your output from your console, all of this kind of stuff that you just did, what you're going to want to do is, first of all, open a file. So I'm going to go over here and open a new tab. So I'm going to click on this little drop down first, and then I'm going to right click on here, whatever you do to get your little drop down when you click. I'm holding control on a laptop, but you might right click if you're using a mouse. And you're going to do open a new tab. And I'm opening files in a new tab. And then I'm going to go to this tab. And I'm going to go in my databases or your csc200 folder, whichever directory you call that. And then in here, there's the SQL file, the only file I have in there so far. You're going to make a new file, and you're just going to call it ex2, because that's this exercise. And you're going to do dash console. You could do underscore, you could do dash. It doesn't matter, I don't think. I'll just do console. And that'll just indicate that this is your console stuff. And also make sure to put txt. Make sure to put txt so it's a text file. And then when you click new file, it should open it up. And there it is, it's open. So this is open in a separate tab. And what you're going to do is you're going to paste all your console text into here and save it. That way it'll be saved and you don't have to worry about this closing up. So to get this stuff out of here, there's no Control A like a select all, or at least that I can find. I had to use this little shortcut. So if you go to the top, wherever your stuff starts, like right here, if you just click here, and you could just double click, and then if you go down to the bottom, wherever your stuff ends, if you shift click, and this should work on Windows or Mac, if you just shift click at the end, it'll select everything. And with everything selected, you can do Control C if you're on Windows or Command C if you're on Mac. So I'm going to do Command C and copy all that and go here and just make sure I can paste it all. And there it is. And actually in a text file, it looks just like it looks in the console. It has all those little dashes and lines and stuff because it's just text. There's no other characters in here, but just text. So there's your console, and then make sure to go to save. And again, if you do anything else, because remember this exercise has a little kind of challenge at the end that you're supposed to do, so you're not just following just my queries. There's a query at the end of your written assignments to do one more query just to get some more information. And you could always add it to here. So if you were here and you did a couple other queries at the end here, you could just copy that stuff. Just click on where it starts, shift click where it ends, and then Command C or Control C to copy, and then come back here and just add it to here. But just remember to hit save when you're done, because if you get out of here, it doesn't always automatically save. So make sure that you're in your databases, you're in this console file. That way we'll have a console for every exercise we do, so you'll have all your stuff saved. And eventually what we'll do is we'll have our SQL queries in an SQL file, so that if you're writing a lot of queries, just like we were doing in here, you can save all these queries, because they'll start to get long and complicated, and they're hard to edit when you're in this console area. It'll be easier to write queries when you're actually writing in a file, and we'll eventually write queries in here in an SQL file that'll be all nice and color-coded and everything. So we're going to eventually do that, but for now you could just paste your console output in here, and we'll do that every time, and then just make sure you save it, because then when I come into your account, I could see your text file and I could just look at your output. And then you don't have to worry about anything staying open or anything like that. So then when I go in here, I could say, oh, there's his output, and I could look at it. And that way, if you had a problem, I could look at it, because I could say, oh, well, you have an error here. You didn't spell presidents right. That's why it's not working, or something like that. So I just wanted to point that out for exercise 2 for spring 2021. And then when you're done, all you have to do is go back to coursework, and under unit 2, go to ex2 president's queries, and click on this and then add a comment. And then all that you have to say is complete it. You could just say complete it or any other message that you have to leave. If you still want to put your username until I get used to it, but I think I know a lot of your usernames, but if you want to put it, it's fine. It just makes it quicker for me to see your username. So if you did that, I'll know to go in there and look at your text file and all that. So I just wanted to point that out for ex2 to make sure you do that, because that way we can have all your output when you're done. Because in the past, because last spring we didn't do that until a couple assignments in when I realized that the console wasn't staying open. So make sure you do that. That's all you have to do when you're done with ex2 is just say complete it and I'll check it out.